Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is facing increasing international criticism at home and abroad. That's as he prepares to start a new 6-year term in office. A former bus driver and union leader, Maduro became president of Venezuela in 2013 after the death of Hugo Chavez. He says 2019 is a year of new beginnings.
Venezuela needs to be respected, and we will make Venezuela respected.
Venezuela is in the midst of an economic collapse, and many say a political and social crisis too. Millions of Venezuelans have fled. The UN says about 10% of the population has left since Maduro first took office. Those who remain are coping with staggering levels of hyperinflation. The IMF predicts prices will rise 10 million% this year, and shortages of medicine and basic goods have become the norm.
We propose to reiterate the illegitimacy of Nicolas Maduro because there was no election on May 20th, and starting on January 10th, he will be usurping the presidency of the nation. And in consequence, this National Assembly, as the only power legitimately elected by the Venezuelan people, will assume the representation of the people, as we should and must.
The opposition boycotted the polls in May, saying the election would be neither free nor fair. And as a new legislative session opened this weekend, the new head of the opposition-controlled National Assembly called on the military to restore democracy. According to a recent survey by Venezuelan pollster Data Analysis, more than 70% of people in the country want Maduro to resign. More than a third say they'd welcome military intervention from another country.
We support the Venezuelan National Assembly as the constitutionally elected organ and urge Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to not assume the presidency, to respect the responsibilities of the Assembly, and to provisionally transfer power until new elections are carried out.
The United States, Europe, and a bloc of Latin American countries have issued sanctions against Maduro. They also say they plan to bar some senior Venezuelan officials from entering their countries. But Maduro blames the economic crisis on what he says is a US-led conspiracy to bring him and his socialist government down. He enters a new term under intense scrutiny from the international community and a volatile situation at home. And what Maduro achieves during the next few months in office will be a key indication in whether Venezuela can establish a path to recovery. Juan Carlos Lamas, TRT World, Caracas.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Diego Moya-Ocampos in London. He's a principal analyst for country risk at IHS's Markit, America's team. Welcome back to the program. The problems that Venezuela currently faces do seem rather incomprehensible, don't they? We've got 1.3 million% inflation, which could rise to 10 million%, according to the IMF, a humanitarian crisis that's driven millions of Venezuelans from the country. Where does Nicolas Maduro even begin to tackle these problems?
Well, the first thing is having the political will to try to tackle this. And certainly the outlook does not look good for Nicolas Maduro and indeed for Venezuela. We expect the economy to contract at least 15%, hyperinflation to continue rising, shortages of food and basic goods, including medicines, amid a collapse of the health system to continue intensifying, and oil production, the country's main source of revenues, which represents 25% of GDP, 50% of fiscal revenues, 96% of foreign exchange, to continue falling. Just to put things in perspective, when Chavez came to power in 1999, Chavez being Maduro's mentor and predecessor, oil production in Venezuela stood at 3.4 million barrels per day. 2 years ago, oil production in Venezuela stood at 2.4 million barrels per day. Today, oil production stands at 1.2 million barrels per day, and we expect this year oil production to fall below 900,000 barrels per day. This is 75% less than 2 years ago.
Yes,
so that's how things are looking for Venezuela.
Yes, and some estimates put Venezuela's oil deposits as the largest in the world. So what's behind this decline in oil production from going from millions of barrels per day to next to nothing, basically? So what's to blame for this?
Absolutely. Venezuela holds the largest proven oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. And what has put the country in such dire state, oil production systematically declining, and the whole mess is epic mismanagement and epic and widespread corruption. This is one of the most corrupt regimes we've seen in Latin America, according to Transparency International, Corruption Perceptions Index, and years of economic mismanagement, a wave of expropriation since 2017 has led to the current situation. For very tight foreign exchange and price controls has generated these distortions of the economy, which continue pushing inflation. But overall, if we have to simplify this, we will have to say that this epic mismanagement and widespread corruption has led Venezuela to its current state. And there are no signs of changing the direction of the economy. The government seems to continue assuming a nationalist stance and more intervention in the economy, more regulatory burden, more controls. Expropriation risks continue being high for the food and basic goods services. And there's no signs that the government is serious about trying to change the situation. And certainly with a government which is starting, which is not being recognized by the US, Canada, the EU, and most Latin American countries, it's going to be very, very difficult to attract foreign direct investment, to develop the necessary infrastructure to, again, increase our production and to continue relaunching or to relaunch the economy.
Yes. I just wanted to ask, in the meantime, US sanctions have been ramped up under the Trump administration. How much of a factor are they in Venezuela's growing, worsening economic problems?
Just a little. In reality, I mean, we have to remember that Venezuela was in economic contraction before the sharp decline of oil prices, before any U.S. sanctions. So basically, U.S. sanctions have come to address the issues of human rights violations and corruption in Venezuela, but they have come at the moment where Venezuela's economy was already in a very, very dire state, at the moment where shortages of food and basic goods were already intense and widespread. So the U.S. sanctions, what they have targeted is the complex system of patronage, which connects the military with the government, a change the system of incentives to try to change behavior of the government elites. But it has not had a significant impact in terms of the economy. The economy was in very dire state.
I'm very sorry, Diego, we will have to leave it there. But thank you again for your time from London.